This is the Times of India Health Plus podcast. It's where we explore specially curated conversations, wellness trends, and lifestyle tips from the TOI newsroom. Stay informed, stay healthy.
I'm Jahnavi, your host for this episode. From sleep scores and calorie counters to mood trackers and smartwatches, health apps and devices are now part of everyday life for so many people. But while these tools promise better health and productivity, are they also making us more anxious? In this episode, we are talking about the rise of health app burnout when tracking every step, heartbeat, and emotion starts feeling more stressful than helpful. Joining us today is Neha Cadabam, Executive Director of Cadabam's Group and a prominent voice in India's mental health care space. With years of work in emotional well-being, behavioral health, and digital dependency, she has been actively shaping conversations around stress, burnout, and the psychological impact of our increasingly connected lifestyles. Our second guest is Dr. Naveen Chandra GS, Head of Department and Lead Consultant in Interventional Cardiology at Astor Whitefield Hospital, Bengaluru. With over a decade of experience in cardiology, he specializes in coronary interventions, cardiovascular imaging, and preventive heart care. An avid runner himself, he brings both a doctor's and a fitness enthusiast perspective to conversations around health, lifestyle, and wellness. In this episode, we'll break down where digital wellness actually helps, where it goes overboard, and how to find a healthier balance. Dr. Naveen, Ms. Neha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jahnavi. Nice to be here.
Happy to be a part of it, Janvi.
Dr. Naveen, let's start with you. In your day to day clinical practice, do you feel like people have started over tracking their health with all these devices and apps?
Yeah, definitely the answer would be yes and no also. See, we do see two kind of people. There are people who are extremes of things, like who are over tracking the health, and there are people who are totally ignorant about things. They don't even look into these things at all. To find a person who has a very clever balance of these things are very, very difficult. I would say less than 5% of the population. Now, yes, there is a extreme high level of over tracking of fitness and health parameters by and large because of the wearable devices, which are very easy to acquire. Now, there are two reasons for it. One, I would say that they are very easy to get. I mean, if you have any health tracker or any wearable in the market, you just add a health to it, you can just sell it. So there is so much of overexposure of things and overselling of all these products. People they believe that having a health tracker is equal to having a healthy lifestyle. It's not so. Second, another thing is that it's more of a guilt feeling. I would say the people who are overindulgent and over tracking those things are people who doesn't do so much for their lifestyle. They feel that sense of guilt by tracking these things and wearing all these things. They feel they can compensate for things where they're not doing. I've seen very clearly a pattern in a lot of patients who doesn't do enough to their health with respect to exercise, diet, or a psychological well-being, tend to overcompensate by having all these trackers and tracking the things. So I think yes, there is an over tracking. Especially I work in a very IT hub, and also I work in a place that I do find a lot of young population who are very stressed and very, very busy. I think that over tracking is there in a one segment of people, but at the same time, you do find people who are not tracking at all. But the people who do enough to their health and etc., they hardly, they have that balance, if you ask me. So yes, the over tracking of the things are happening mostly because of not taking care of themselves. That's what my finding would be.
That's a very good point you mentioned, doctor. Often people who do not do much for the health are now getting obsessed with wearables and health apps. Ms. Neha, I come to you with this. So, like doctor was mentioning, there's a lot of guilt associated with not doing enough for their health, and people start doing all this. So, do you find that instead of you know taking a lot of steps to be healthy, like the doctor mentioned, the idea of healthy itself is changing now, and are people getting obsessed with these streaks and numbers that they find on their apps?
So definitely, it's a psychological game, if I can say so. A notification on your phone or on your wrist always obviously is going to grab your attention. So initially, it motivates you, saying, okay, you're able to track it. So set a goal for yourself, and if you do it every day, you're going to work on it. You're going to get fitter. It's all the claims that it makes. But what happens after you're in it for a couple of days? Let's say you've also tried to achieve the streak with work Monday to Friday. Weekend is a time you want to relax, rejuvenate, probably even go overboard with partying, etc. But then what happens? That's when the guilt, comes in, that, oh, my streak is gone, I didn't do it for the weekend. And then you start feeling guilty about it, right? And then you start then thinking, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not doing it, I'm not doing well for myself. So then the guilt comes in that way. Although it helps, it starts off with a great motivation, but I think when it persists in a way, it then sort of becomes something that sort of starts bothering you, and then you start becoming anxious of things.
I think we used to have Snapchat streaks before and people were obsessed with this. Now I think health apps are taking the place. I think a
Yes.
lot of people post their Strava screenshots or any other, health app tracking screenshots. So what you mentioned is a very valid point.
There's a
Doc,
community out there also, right? So it's like,
correct.
oh, my friend's done a streak, they have a 15-day streak, so even I have to catch up on that streak. So then it becomes a competition, which I don't think is healthy, because what your friend is going through and what lifestyle they have may not be the same as yours.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Dr. Naveen, I come back to you. As a result of, this excessive tracking and multiple parameters, do you see patients who panic over some fluctuations in their apps, or they'll be sleeping and their sleep data will show something else? Their smartwatch will show that there's a variation in their ECG. So, do people end up in your OPD after this? Are there any particular cases that come to your mind about patients panicking and ending up in your OPD after they see something on their device?
Yeah, all the time. At least weekly, I would see one patient. They become obsessed about numbers. See, one thing you have to understand is that these numbers are interpreted with the ranges. Right? See, if you give that numbers to me, I would interpret it in a different way. For a simple example, the normal heart rate is between 60 to 100. Doesn't mean that a person who has a 59 has some serious issue. Doesn't mean that a person who has a 101 has a serious issue. But your app is going to give a notification. Okay. See, heart rate it's a very dynamic variable. It's not a static variable. You just get anxious, you just walk and come, your heart rate is going to go up. So people get very obsessed about it. When you sleep, your heart rate tends to go down. There are people who goes to up to 20, 25, 30. We don't panic at all. But that gives you a notification. I have a very clear cut patient, comes almost once in a month. He, in fact, had a supraventricular tachycardia. It's a condition where your heart rate suddenly goes up. We did an ablation. We treated him. Now, where heart rate goes up to 130, 140, they are abnormal rhythm. Actually, it's not normal rhythm. And he's treated, and the chances of the recurrence of the disease is 1%. Now, he is so obsessed, he wears a watch, and every time he gets a notification of 110, 120, he's in emergency doing an ECG. He thinks that he's got an SVT back. And in fact, to a certain extent, I started telling that just don't wear the watch, don't panic. You will get to know when you have the problem. But in fact, he went to another cardiology. He got another electrophysiological study done, and there was no arrhythmia at all. So he's become very obsessed about it. I can give you another example where a patient, with a heart rate goes even 130, 140, he ends up in an emergency thinking that he's going to have a heart attack. He's totally deconditioned. Every time he walks, his heart rate raises up. Now, what do? You have to exercise to get that heart rate under control. If you see athletes, if you give well-conditioned person, they will have a heart rate around 50, 60. That's a sign of good health, right? So, but these numbers, when it goes suddenly just 1 or 2 points, your app is going to give notification. So that stress will push the heart rate even further. It's a vicious cycle. So these notifications, certain notifications. See, another thing is you have to understand is that there are very wide range of variables. Okay, the watches, the bands, and the rings. There are so many companies are there. There are certain companies who do a real R&D work. There are certain companies who don't do that. So I have seen patients with a 140, 150 heart rate. Their heart rate is actually 110. So we don't know which company they wear, how accurate they are, how much of R&D they have done in their products. So yes, it's all the time. It's all the time. It sometimes, we try to tell them that please don't worry. There's nothing going to happen. There are patients I've told, just remove this. This is going to improve your quality of life. So you're not having a problem. So this is a very, very common problem. Overuse of technology.
You also mentioned, Dr. Naveen, that you work in a primarily IT hub and you see a lot of these young patients. So I also want to ask, is it always the young patients who come to you with these problems? Is it across all age groups? Do children also use these apps now? Does it sort of lead to a panic among parents when their parameters show up on the apps?
Yeah, it's predominantly that middle age we see this happening. In children's we do have, but see, by and large, children, if you say people before the 20s, they are not so concerned about their health. See, one thing you have to understand is that these are not health apps or health tracker; they are fitness trackers. There's a difference between health and fitness. A fit person is likely to be healthy, but it's not a must. There are other things other than fitness also which brings him to the health. This problem in an elderly population is not so much because maybe they're not that tech savvy also. I've seen that the extremes of age, like after 60, 70, they are very, very intelligent in using these trackers. They just see their activity. They'll see, count their steps. They don't see anything else. They'll tell doctor, "Aaj maine 5,000 or 10,000 steps I do." They don't see anything else. What matters to them is steps and kilometers. But this younger population do try to see a lot more parameters than them. So it's a primarily a problem of middle age individuals than older age. I mean, extremes are possible. Young kids are also possible, but it's more in that population.
That's a very relatable thing because I would say the way my father tracks his apps, where, like you said, he just tracks, oh, I did 10,000 steps today and he's happy. But when I track my sleep, I track my calorie intake. Like you mentioned, I think the difference between the age groups is very stark. Thank you. So now, Neha, coming back to you. So wellness apps, essentially, a lot of people have these apps now. Everybody has one in their phone. I think it comes inbuilt. So when someone starts using these apps, it initially feels very motivational. We feel like, oh, we did this today, we achieved that today. But as we continue to use it, we sort of start feeling exhausted. Keeping up with so many things feels tiring at the end of a day. Like sometimes I'll just be busy with my work and I see a notification on my phone where it says, "How are you feeling today?" And it's just frustrating to answer that. So, if you could shed more light on why it feels exhausting after a while, and if any particular cases where you've seen people just stop the usage altogether after going through this digital health app burnout or exhaustion.
Yeah, I think the exhaustion is very, very real. It's like you're on the spotlight on the time, all the time. For example, you're on stage, you're an artist, you go on stage, you perform, and then you go out, right? And then you carry on with the rest of the day. Here, what happens is with a tracker on you all the time, it's like you're on the spotlight all the time, right? So you're constantly, they're saying, "Oh, have you had enough water? How are you feeling today? Did you do your 5K, 10K, have you achieved your goal?" Then it'll also motivate you by saying, you're not too far, you can still achieve your goal today. So it's a constant thing that it's reminding you, yes, with the motivation to encourage you, but also it then becomes very exhausting because it does not take your context, right? It
Correct.
does not see that you're probably at a conference or you're having a long day at work, you've seen too many clients today, or how your day looks like. It is only focusing on, okay, you need to achieve your goal. We're tracking your heart rate. Okay, your stress level was very high in this meeting. It's only telling you things which can be very, very exhausting, and it can make you very, very anxious.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
So it's like constantly putting you on the radar that, okay, watch out for this, watch out for this, and stand up now. And so it's like constantly giving you input, which I think is so much input may not really be required.
Hmm, hmm. So, at what stage do you usually see that people, start feeling exhausted? Where does the sort of dopamine hit stop, and where does it start getting exhausting? Like, someone you have seen in your clinic who just, got overwhelmed and stopped using it.
So, directly someone with this does not walk into the clinic or the hospital, right? But it's with some other issues, other concerns,
Right.
anxiety, hypochondriasis or something else, who will walk in and say, my heart rate has been higher, or my Whoop band is saying my stress levels, my recovery rate hasn't been very good. So, they are the people who walk in, and then, we try and understand what is the issue. And then you realize that, when there has been guilt streaks and over dependency, where, okay, I cannot sleep without my sleep tracker because I have to see what is the quality. And let's say even if I feel good waking up, but if my tracker is saying that your quality of sleep was 65%, the stress is the impact it has on a person. It's like a scorecard. It's like you're getting scored for everything that you do. So the moment you see that it is starting to affect your day-to-day activities, it's overpowering your monitoring, and it is really disturbing you in terms of, okay, have I done it? So the over dependency on it, I think those becomes red flags when we start talking to people about, can we do a streak of not using it for 3 days? Okay,
Right.
you know your first 2 days are not going to be great, but gradually you will start realizing it does not make a difference. It's about just being conscious to ensure you've done what you need to do, maybe your 10,000 steps or something else. But beyond that, everything does not need to be tracked all the time. It does take a lot of work for us to go through that detox and get them off it, but definitely, I think on the long run, it is something that is required and is in the benefit of the person.
Okay. Dr. Naveen, now I'll ask you, with so many wearable devices and apps, what are some checklists that probably users should have? What should they look for when they download a wellness app or a health app per se, or when they're buying a wearable device?
Now, see, number one thing, I'll tell you one. Again, where I say it's not a health tracker, it's a fitness tracker. It doesn't track your health. Now, again, I said, reiterating that point, fitness is not equal to health. It is a fit person is likely to be healthy. It's not vice versa, because there are other parameters also. So, what does these apps do is he tracks your fitness. That's all. Now, what does he track? On a regular basis, it will track your heart rate. How does it say if you're fit? Your heart rates are well within, like, lower the range, it's actually better. If you are, when you're walking, if your heart rate doesn't climb very high, and recoverability and all those things are a sign of fitness. There's something called a VO2 max. Basically, it says how much your oxygen consumption is, how well your body is utilizing your oxygen. That means you are likely to be more fitter. Now, it tracks sleep. Again, sleep is a controversial topic in a sense that your sleep onset, sleep offset is tracked reasonably well, but stages of sleep and all are not very well tracked, even with the best devices right now. Okay, duration of sleep, yeah, it's quite good. It actually tells you a good how much of a sleep you have had, and but how deep your sleep was, how was your NREM. This may not be very accurate in a way to pick that up. So, but what it does very well is your activity level. Now, what do you need for a layman? Now, these are required for people who are doing a lot of activity, professionals and all those things. Yeah, do need that. They use very high end bands, gambits, etc., which actually tracks a lot of things. Yeah, I use Apple Watch, but there are very few things I track. I track my activity level, how much I walk and how much steps I do, etc. When I run, see how much of a heart rate it goes up. When I run, I don't see. When I come back and see how much I achieved and etc. I never stopped, or I never did anything based on those findings. I know that nothing is going to happen. Your physical discomfort is the most important thing. People used to run from 100 years. Not that now they track so many things. Now it tracks how well your heart rate is doing, how what zones you are going in, how fit you are. It will tell you, but it is never going to tell you. There is not a single watch will predict whether a person is going to have an attack or not. Yes, it is used in interpretation of atrial fibrillation. FDA has approved Apple Watch for atrial fibrillation. To be very fair, I have had 3 or 4 patients in last 2-3 years where I have picked up atrial fibrillation because of an Apple Watch. Very clearly, I have picked up some arrhythmias which can cause potential, strokes in the past. I had doubts. I asked them to buy a watch, and I have diagnosed it and treated well. This happens. This happens. There are uses of this. There are in elderly patients. I asked them. Fall alert is another important thing in the elderly patients. I've had patients, fall alerts are very important thing where they pick up certain fall alerts, and in elderly patients, their kids can keep a track on that. Emergency alerts are something. Some of my patients, unfortunately, has given my number as an emergency alert. I do get an alert sometimes in the night. So there are good things about it. I'm not denying that. But again, only thing what matters for a normal day-to-day life is basically an activity tracker, to a certain extent sleep tracker. To be very fair, there are people who I don't wear my watch during the sleep. Of course, it is going to give you a lot more data and all those things. I'm not so this one about it, but people who are into fitness, who are into running, who are into very high professional activity, yes, they gives you a lot more data. I do interpret those data myself when I go for a long runs and all those things. But again, I don't act on it. As a professional, I know how much to give importance or not to importance. But if you give the same data to a layman, he's going to freak out because he doesn't know. And all these data are interpreted by a standard. It's not AI driven. It is going to interpret as per your age, your conditioning, etc. So most of the watches track your activity well. Most of their waist bands track their activity well. But beyond that, VO2 max maybe a little bit and heart rate maybe a little bit. But otherwise, you don't need so much of data for a layman to do a regular activity. I don't think you need that much.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen. I think you have drawn a clear distinction between what is necessary and what is, what are some things people can just, even if it records, not pay much attention to, and what are the things we should be paying attention to. I'll come back to you, Ms. Neha. So, psychologically, what is your advice to our listeners? How do they find the balance between tracking their metrics, but also not becoming obsessed with it? How can they avoid digital app burnout?
I think first and foremost, what is important for us to understand is the dopamine hit that it gives. Every streak, every award, every ta is nothing but it's your hitting your dopamine. And we need to try and understand that there are many other ways that we can actually work on that is not dependent on trackers or these devices. And we need to understand exactly like how Dr. Naveen has rightly pointed out that everything does not need to be tracked, right? There is no need to do that. So just focus on maybe a bit of activity level for you to understand have you moved enough. Also, what is important is you don't need a device to tell you if you've moved enough. You can just ask yourself. You will really know that have I moved my body enough today? Have I eaten healthy enough today?
Absolutely.
So it is important to read the signs that your body is giving. I think that's going to be enough for you to really focus on that. And like I said previously, notice if it is creating over dependency, wherein at some point you're doing it because you want to maintain the streak, but you're not really enjoying tracking so much on a day-to-day basis. Two, it's making you more anxious than using that information appropriately. It just becomes overstimulation and over information, which is not required really. So being aware of that, and if it is affecting your day to day activities, I think just being aware of these three things will really help someone sort of maintain that balance to say, okay, it's there, fine. If it's not there, it's fine. Yeah.
Both of you have shared so much insights. I'm sure this would help our listeners to find a balance between usage and overusage of these apps and variables. But before we wrap up, I just want to have like a quick rapid fire segment with you. These are like bugging concerns that our listeners have, even we have, like on a day to day basis. So, my first question is, what is one health metric people obsess over too much?
Heart rate.
Neha?
I think I would agree. Heart rate it would be.
The next question, smartwatch while sleeping, yes or no?
No. If you have a problem with sleeping, I think you should wear. Otherwise, if you're sleeping well, no.
I would say until unless really advised by a doctor, and if you need to track it for a particular reason or for a particular issue or illness that you're having, otherwise I would definitely say no.
What is one health trend that you wish would disappear?
Mm, I think overtracking.
Right online. Dr. Naveen?
Overtracking is one thing, and I think there are certain apps where you count these calories and take a picture, and I think that's totally unnecessary.
Absolutely agreed. My last question is, one offline habit that is better than any app.
I would say strike a conversation because I really think today loneliness is something that's really creeping in and increasing a lot. So I would say human speak in human conversation.
Dr. Naveen?
Yeah, psychological well-being, people don't give importance to that. I say one on the offline happen actually helps me a lot is walking or running, because that's so important. Forget about all these things. Finally you will have to act to be fit. That's more than enough.
This conversation was as fun as it was helpful. Ms. Neha, Dr. Naveen, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Janvi, and it was a wonderful conversation to share our thoughts and listen to others' thoughts as well. Thank you for this.
Don't tune out yet. It's time for the nutrition power tip of the week from nutritionist Sangeeta Iyer.
Make sure to prioritize 20 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast. Starting your day with a protein rich breakfast can help you improve satiety, reduce unnecessary snacking, and support better appetite control through the day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Times of India Health Plus podcast. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or the TOI app. And if you have a health topic you'd like us to discuss, write to us at toihealth.plus@timesofindia.com. Stay healthy and see you next time.